The room smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. A bare bulb buzzed overhead, flickering just enough to make everyone look more tired than they already were. On folding chairs around a mismatched wooden table sat 12 employees, coders, designers, assistants, all clutching the same unspoken worry. Payday never came. At the head of a table stood Gregory Sandler. He styled himself like a startup messiah, rolled up sleeves, expensive sneakers, a voice tuned to TED Talk bravado. In his hand, a manila envelope stuffed with papers. "Friends," Gregory began, raising his voice like a revival preacher, "today we're doing something historic. You are not employees, you are pioneers, and pioneers don't work for paychecks. They work for destiny." Some exchanged bewildered glances. Others shifted uncomfortably. The weekend's unpaid overtime still weighing heavily. Gregory smirked. "Paychecks, that's what small thinkers get. He swept the room with his index finger like he was blessing them, are going to be millionaires." He pulled the contracts from the envelope and, without ceremony, ripped each page dramatically in half. The sound of tearing paper crackled like sparks from a fire. The shred of actual employment rights fluttered to the floor in white confetti. A couple of eager interns clapped nervously. Their eyes shone with caught-up wonder, the kind that comes from wanting to believe in miracles, but others froze, jaws tight. Maya, in the back corner, whispered to herself, "Millionaires don't start out unpaid." Gregory continued, basking in his own theater. "From here on, you're not workers, you're co-founders. Sweat equity is equity. Every hour you give me now is an hour that multiplies into freedom later. When the investors roll in, you'll thank yourselves for standing at the ground floor of genius." The room swayed between awe and unease. Some stole glances at one another. Is this even legal? But Gregory's confidence was a fortress, daring anyone to challenge it with a final grin. He stomped on a pile of contract scraps for emphasis and declared, "From this day forward, we're family, and families don't keep score." The folding chairs creaked as bodies leaned forward, caught somewhere between fear, faith, and fatigue. Phones buzzed silently in pockets, but nobody checked them. What none of them realized, what none of them that could know in that moment, was that the sacrifices Gregory demanded weren't building a unicorn empire at all. But no one yet knew what their sacrifice was really funding. If Section 1 was the spark of Gregory's self-declared vision, Section 2 was the fire he built around it. Not warmth, but a mesmerizing blaze that consumed those too tired or too desperate to look away. Each morning began the same way. Gregory marching into the office, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, already dictating half a dozen commands before his jacket even hit the chair. The night shift employees, bleary-eyed from coding until 4 a.m., sat up straighter when he cleared his throat. You think Jobs built Apple getting time and a half overtime? You think Musk had a cozy 9 to 5? His voice would rise in crescendos, cutting through exhaustion like a whip. Greatness requires pain, sacrifice now, glory forever. And some believed him. They had to, because believing made the gnawing in their stomachs feel less like hunger and more like destiny. That belief had a cost. Meals skipped turned into dinner of instant ramen packets. Cars were sold to cover rent. A junior designer pawned her grandmother's watch just to keep the lights on at home. Gregory framed it as noble. You're investing in yourselves. Don't you see? It's not money wasted, it's money transformed. But while his rhetoric soared, the reality dragged on the floor. Cots in the corner of the office became beds, a rotation of weary human forms under thin blankets. Weekend mornings blurred into weekday midnights. At that small warehouse space, life and labor became indistinguishable. Meanwhile, Gregory made a spectacle of his leadership. Team pep talks were less inspiration and more ritual. Employees, slumped in rolling chairs, listened as he paced like a general preparing troops for an unwinnable war. He invoked the mantra again and again, investors are right around the corner. Stay the course, the breakthroughs will be world-changing. The irony, the so-called breakthroughs were never published, never patented, never even shared beyond vague diagrams and buzzwords. But if anyone dared ask specifics, Gregory's dismissive smile, half charm, half contempt, shut them down. Visionaries don't owe explanations. They owe results. Trust me. Still, in the corners of the office, half-muted whispers bloomed. Someone's cousin asked why they hadn't been paid in weeks. A neighbor raised a brow at the late-night carpool, leaving the warehouse each evening. And one skeptical father grumbled, "You sure this isn't some kind of cult? I mean, working for free, praying for money that never comes." Yet even those whispers couldn't compete with Gregory's bravado. He was magnetic on purpose. He flaunted magazine clippings of billionaires taped to the wall. He declared their garage-era struggle would be remembered in documentaries one day. He embodied grandiosity so loudly that exhaustion, doubt, and hunger felt drowned out. But there were moments, flickering like cracks in a mask. The way Gregory always sidestepped questions about investor names. The way he arrived to meetings in new shoes while his team quietly checked their dwindling bank balances. The loyalty of his flock held by threads of fear and hope. Until those threads began to snap, rumors multiplied. Someone spotted Gregory at a luxury restaurant, lobster tail glistening while his team reheated leftovers. Another employee saw him slipping into a black-windowed car. It was easy for Gregory to deflect once, twice, even 3 times, but the evidence of his double life was mounting, far too heavy for sheer charisma to carry. But cracks in Gregory's story would soon grow impossible to ignore. It started as murmurs beneath the hum of the fluorescent lights, the kind of half-conversations that died whenever Gregory's footsteps echoed down the hall. The team had sacrificed nights and weekends, meals and savings, but Gregory's appearance told another story. While his employees patched together jeans with safety pins and reused coffee filters, Gregory strutted into the office draped in designer shirts, patent leather shoes polished immaculately. His watch, always a different one, always gleaming, caught the corner of their eyes like a slap. Maya noticed first. She was the quiet one, steady and rational, the employee who logged the most hours, who never made a scene, who seemed to carry the team's conscience on her shoulders. When Gregory brushed past her one morning, she caught a glimpse of his wallet bursting with receipts, high-end eateries, boutique brands, transactions that didn't look anything like sweat equity. Later that week, the whispers sharpened into pointed questions. "Why hasn't the supplier delivered our order?" asked Devon, the engineer whose laptop was running on duct-taped wires. "We put the down payment in 3 weeks ago." "And why did the internet cut out again?" muttered Jasmine, whose pay-as-you-go phone bill was months behind. When the team asked her to look into the budget, Maya frowned. She had a careful way of speaking, as though weighing every word. "Gregory, we've all been giving ours money, even selling personal belongings to keep this afloat, yet the equipment invoices aren't getting paid. But you don't exactly look like someone struggling." The room went silent, air thick as wet cement. Gregory's smile flickered, just for a second, then returned, wide and plastic. "Struggling," he scoffed, pacing like a caged tiger. "You think visionaries live like paupers. You think Steve Jobs wore potato sacks. Presentation matters. If I don't look like success, no investor will even step through that door. My clothes, my image, those are investments in you. When I win, you all win," Maya pressed delicately. "Then explain the unpaid suppliers. Explain the missing funds." The smile vanished this time. His voice was razor sharp. "If you don't believe in the vision, you don't belong here." The words thudded into the room, brutal and final. A couple of workers looked at their shoes. One slipped out early, muttering about needing a second job. Another clenched his jaw, torn between rage and dependence. That was Gregory's real power, not charisma alone, but manipulation woven with threat. He knew most of them couldn't afford to walk away. Their resumes screamed unstable employment. The job market outside was brutal, and he dangled the dream of stock options like a hypnotist's pocket watch. Leave, and you lose the dream. Stay, and maybe someday a miracle arrives. Still, the cracks were widening. In hushed snatches of conversation by the vending machine, workers confessed unease. Why did Gregory vanish on Fridays, only to return Monday with a suspicious tan? Why did payroll emails bounce? Why did the man demanding they skip meals die nightly on meals he refused to share? Gregory sensed the discontent, and he stamped it out whenever it came too close to ignition. He ridiculed questions, scoffed at complaints, shamed doubters as weaklings. At every meeting he played the same refrain. "You are here because you are chosen. Those who can't hack it don't deserve to be here." And still, Maya's conviction grew. She didn't raise her voice often, but her eyes told a story of someone watching too much, tallying too carefully. She was the one others sought quietly, nervously confessing doubts like believers turning to a priest. One late night, the doubts became unavoidable. The system servers froze mid-upload. Screens across the office flared with error messages. Chaos erupted, deadlines shattered, code evaporating. Gregory wasn't there. He had left early, promising a big investor dinner, so Maya slid into his office chair with practiced calm, cracked open the admin panel, and began sifting through the directories. What she stumbled upon, buried in a tucked-away folder, made her throat tighten. Numbers, receipts, transfers, things she was sure she wasn't supposed to see. Her heart pounded as she copied files onto an old thumb drive. The machine whirred, its fan louder than the breath she struggled to steady. Around her, teammates joked nervously, cursing the system downtime. None of them knew that right then. Maya had opened a door Gregory had kept bolted shut. She pulled the flash drive free, slid it into her pocket, and looked back at the blinking, frozen monitor. Then came the day the server crash exposed something Gregory never meant them to see. The server crash that evening lingered like a storm cloud, static, crawling across every screen. Lines of code vanished into corrupted files. Spreadsheets refused to open. Deadlines dissolved like paper in water. The team worked in near panic, hunched over glow-lit monitors, fingers a blur as they tried to salvage weeks of unpaid effort. But in the center of the chaos, Maya's pulse beat to a different drum. The admin panel Gregory usually kept locked, password protected with almost obsessive secrecy, had glitched open. An opportunity too dangerous to ignore shimmered in front of her. She hesitated just long enough to look over her shoulder. Around her, exhausted faces were locked in their battles with frozen screens. Nobody noticed when she slid into Gregory's sleek leather chair. Nobody saw her open the folder labeled innocently as quarterly docs. Inside, she expected maybe invoices, vendor lists, perhaps some sign of investor communications that could steady their unraveling faith. But what bloomed instead were records that read like a grotesque shopping spree. Line item 1, $14,279 Santorini Villa July. Line item 2, $8,640 Private Club Annual Membership, Greenwich. Line item 3, $4,500 Monthly Recurring, Luxury Car Lease. Line item 4, multiple charges tagged vaguely as Executive Wellness, each neatly rounding 2000s. Page after page, entry after entry. The company's budget wasn't building technology at all, it was funding Gregory's personal empire of extravagance. Maya's breath caught. She leaned closer as if the monitor might back away and hide itself from her. Her eyes darted across columns of numbers, disbelief stacking into fury. While she and her co-workers stretched packets of noodles over 3 straight dinners, Gregory had been sipping imported wine overlooking the Aegean Sea for weeks. He'd spoken of sacrifice, of destiny, of investors right around the corner. But the evidence was unmistakable. The only investment he had nurtured faithfully was himself. A bead of sweat slid past her temple. She grabbed an old thumb drive from her bag, hands trembling as she inserted it into the port. The slow progress, the bar that crept across the screen rattled her nerves worse than any nightmare. Every second felt like borrowed time. She heard laughter in the distance, 2 developers cracking a nervous joke about the system downtime. Somewhere near the stairwell, the heavy echo of footsteps pounded. Was Gregory back? Her hands froze for half a beat before resuming. Shaky but resolute. Her entire body screamed urgency. Hurry, don't get caught. Copy faster. The bar hit 32%. Her foot tapped against the floor unconsciously, sending an audible rhythm into the room. Jasmine glanced over, raising a brow, but quickly returned to a frozen project. 56%. Maya rehearsed in her mind what she would say if Gregory barged in. Maybe she'd pretend to be checking logs. Maybe act like the crash had led her here accidentally. But the knowledge burned into her. This wasn't an accident. This was revelation. 72%. Her ears strained for every sound, the creak of the stairwell door, the rumble of laughter down the hall, the whir of ancient fans fighting for air inside, tired machines. 88%. She pressed a hand flat against a desk just to ground herself. One slip, one accidental click, one burst of suspicion, and Gregory could destroy her career with a phone call. Yet doing nothing would mean letting him sink the entire team deeper into his deception. 100%. Complete. The notification ding was so soft, she almost wept with relief. Maya yanked the thumb drive out and slipped it into her pocket, trying to breathe, like nothing was unusual. Trying not to hear the hammering of her heartbeat. Suddenly the shuffle of leather soles echoed nearer. Gregory's voice drifted down the hallway. Honey smooth and venomous beneath the surface, as he reassured someone on his phone. Of course they'll keep working. They're loyal, pathetic, but loyal. Maya shut everything down with a furious flurry of clicks, minimizing, closing, locking. The folder disappeared seconds before Gregory swung back into the office, carrying the scent of expensive cologne with him. Status update, he demanded, eyes scanning the room like a hawk awaiting prey. The team stumbled over vague replies, feeding him enough technical noise to keep his ego satisfied. He barely glanced at the monitors, already more invested in bragging about the big deal he'd just closed. Maya sat at her station again, posture carefully casual, but in her pocket, the thumb drive felt like it was burning, radiating proof. She had done it. She had taken the story Gregory had carefully hidden and tethered it to the one weapon he couldn't strong-arm, couldn't silence, couldn't outspeech. Cold, black and white evidence. The weight of truth now sat with her. Her palms were damp, her throat dry, but her jaw had hardened to resolve. She glanced around the office at her co-workers, Jasmine with shadows under her eyes, Devin chewing nervously on a frayed sweatshirt string, the interns nodding off at their desks. They deserved to know whose empire they kept afloat. But knowing was only the first step, and showing was a dangerous one. Maya pressed her hands together, swallowing the storm gathering in her chest. For years Gregory had weaponized loyalty and fear against them all. Yet now, sitting quietly in a dim warehouse packed with weary dreamers, Maya had the kind of ammunition he couldn't dismiss with a smile or a threat. She had the truth, but she also knew proof means nothing if no one dares to act. The summons came as an email-stamped mandatory attendance required. No explanation, no agenda. Just a time slot. 8 a.m. sharp. Gregory's meetings didn't usually start that early, which made the command ring louder. Colder when the employees gathered. They found the office transformed. The clutter of coffee cups had been swept away. Chairs neatly aligned in rows facing Gregory's desk. He perched at the head like a monarch waiting for his subjects, chin-high blazer draped over his chair and a calculated display of power. Maya felt the shift immediately. This wasn't a meeting. This was a trial. Gregory began with silence, letting the unease build. His eyes lingered too long on each face. daring them to blink. Finally he spoke. "I hear whispers." His tone was theatrical, rich with disdain. "I hear some of you doubt me. Some of you question where this ship is headed." He leaned forward. "And let me be clear. If you don't trust the captain, you can swim back to shore. Alone." A few employees stiffened. Devon gripped the arm of his chair until his knuckles turned white. Jasmine's foot tapped uncontrollably against the floor. Gregory rose suddenly, pacing like a prosecuting attorney. "Do not mistake me for someone ordinary. I am giving you a chance most people will beg their entire lives for. If you spit on that, if you dare call me a fraud." His voice sharpened like a blade. "Understand I can ruin careers with a single phone call." The threat hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. He slammed a palm down on the desk for punctuation. Papers rattled. Workers startled. The echo seemed to close the walls around them. Tech is small. Investors talk. Recruiters talk. If you betray me, I'll make sure your names are radioactive. No one will hire you. Not in this city. Not in this industry. He pointed accusingly, as if the entire room sat in the defendant's chair. So before you decide to gossip, think carefully about the price. It was the performance of a tyrant, convinced of his impunity. He did not see the cluster of weary eyes beginning to turn glassy with rage. He only saw his own reflection in the polished edge of the desk. Judge, jury, executioner. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence felt endless, a desert of dread and hesitation. Devon opened his mouth, then closed it, words bleeding out into nothing. Jasmine looked as though she might stand, only to falter, retreating into herself again. Gregory smirked, savoring the fear he'd planted. "That's what I thought," he sneered. "No faith. Then leave. Otherwise, work. Work without whining, without questions." His arrogance was a performance polished through repetition. The posture, the cadence, the cruelty finely tuned. He wanted them to tremble, and for most it worked. But at the far end of the table, Maya's hand moved slowly, calmly, a deliberate gesture in stark contrast to the panic radiating around her. Every set of eyes flicked her way as she reached into her bag. Gregory froze mid-rant, confusion folding into irritation. Maya pulled out a single piece of paper, crisp and white. She slid it forward across the glossy desk with steady resolve. The faint rasp of paper against wood sounded louder than any shout. The printed lines caught Gregory's attention. Rows of numbers, expense categories, and the words Santorini Villa July. For the first time in weeks, Gregory's grin faltered. Maya's voice was quiet, steady. The sharp clarity of someone who already knew the truth needed no stagecraft. "You want a trial," she said. "Then maybe we should put this into evidence." A stunned silence cracked the room apart. The workers blinked, heads tilting, trying to read what was on the page. Their confusion coiling into dawning suspicion. Gregory's face drained of color, then flickered back to crimson. His fist clenched at his side. The tyrant's mask slipped, just for a heartbeat. And in that fragile moment, the balance of power wavered. The judge on his throne was about to be dragged into the defendant's chair, and then Maya slid a single printed page across the desk. The paper slid across the desk, landing like a silent grenade. Gregory's jaw twitched, his smile gone as quickly, as if snuffed out by a gust of wind. Maya placed one hand on the sheet, pinning it flat. Her voice was unshaken, clean, surgical. $14,279. Santorini Villa rental, July. The room froze. Eyebrows furrowed. A nervous cough slipped into the silence. Jasmine tilted her head toward the page, her lips silently mouthing Villa. Maya flicked to the next line, her tone unimpressed, almost bored. Private club annual membership, Greenwich. 8,640. Every digit hit, the air like a gavel striking. Gregory barked a laugh, but the sound rang hollow. What kind of nonsense is this? Fabrications, misunderstandings. He gestured chaotically as if volume might erase the words in front of him. Maya didn't blink. She raised her eyes, locked on him, and dropped the next hammer. Recurring charge. $4,500 monthly for a German luxury car. A lease, not equipment, not payroll, not progress, just leather seats. Gasps punctured the tense quiet. One of the interns snapped upright, whispering, "But my laptop screen's been cracked for 3 months. Her voice cracked mid-sentence. Gregory lunged toward the paper, his hand a claw. But before he could seize it, Devon stood from his chair. Phone up, camera rolling. The little red dot glowed like a warning beacon. "You shouldn't." Gregory's voice quivered with a jagged edge asterisk. "Oh, I think he should," Maya replied, folding the paper in half calmly as though she hadn't just dismantled her boss's kingdom with a single gesture. More phones appeared, cautious at first, then emboldened by the swelling tide of courage. Around the table, screens glared back at Gregory like dozens of tiny mirrors, each reflecting not the visionary he pretended to be, but the fraud he really was. Maya's voice cut through the buzz of digital recorders. Spa packages. Thousands. Gregory's arm shot forward again, but Devon stepped between them. "You lay a hand on her, and this goes straight online." The tension in the room mounted. Gregory pacing like a cornered beast. The workers gathering not behind desks anymore, but beside Maya, Forming a loose semicircle of defiance, she pressed on. Voice louder now, no longer muted compassion but ringing accusation. Vegas bar tabs. Thousands more. This wasn't vision, Gregory. This wasn't sacrifice. It was theft dressed as destiny. Our work, our lives, your playground. The strength in her tone pulled nods from the exhausted faces that had once only whispered their grievances. Gregory spun on them, shoulders shaking. With fury, you think this company exists because of you. You think your menial typing, your button pushing, your code means anything without me. I am the reason anyone is here. This is my company, mine. The outburst slammed against the walls, ricocheting with the desperation of someone who realized control was slipping. Maya waited for the echo to die and answered in a steady, measured timbre, not yelling, not matching his volume, but slicing him in half with calm precision. And this was our work. You stole all of it. The words settled into the air like iron filings. There was nothing to argue with, nothing to bluster past. It was the undeniable truth rephrased in its purest, sharpest form. Phones zoomed in closer. Dozens of employees now had proof, not only of documents but of Gregory's unraveling. His confession by arrogance. Gregory's fury curdled into panic. Put the phones down now, you'll regret this. His voice broke in the middle, no longer a sermon but a plea disguised as rage. For months he had wielded threats, blacklisting, reputational assassinations. But now, every phone that stared back at him carried more power than his Rolodex ever could. Viral faith was stronger than whispered fear. Several workers shouted back, voices overlapping. You starved us. You lied about investors. You used us to buy toys. The room burst alive in a storm of accusation, energy reversing. The trial had shifted. Gregory wasn't the judge anymore. He was the defendant. Cornered, hands trembling. Tried another tactic, classic Gregory. Repackaged arrogance for sympathy. Don't you see? He cajoled, voice cracking like a bad salesman at closing time. All of this, the image, the luxury, it's how the game is played. Nobody listens to a hungry founder. I had to show the world we'd already made it. To attract the real money. I did it for us. For all of you. The words, desperate and hollow, landed like paper darts. Maya shook her head. You did it for you. The rest of us were just collateral. Expense. The silence afterward was deadly. No murmurs, no nervous chuckles. Just the heaving breaths of a man finally trapped in the cage of his own lies, surrounded by those he believed too powerless to speak. And then, something almost theatrical happened. Jasmine, timid Jasmine, stepped forward and asked a question. Into the silence, her voice louder than she realized. Where's our money, Gregory? He flinched. Another employee piled on. My rent's late because of you. Where's our money? More voices. Stronger, rising, piling, a chorus of workers unifying in open defiance. Gregory pressed his palms against his temples as if the noise alone could crush him. Stop, just stop. His face flushed crimson. His once unshakable posture had collapsed, shoulders hunched, eyes darting for escape routes, but there was none left. Every corner held someone with proof, and fury. Maya folded her arms. You said you could ruin us with one phone call. Look around. Gregory, it's not our names on that paper, it's yours. Her words cut deeper than any lawsuit. They carried truth, and more terrifying to Gregory. They carried consensus. He tried one final escape maneuver, lunging for Devon's phone. The move was sloppy, desperate. Workers grabbed his arms, pulling him back, holding him fast while the cameras caught every flail, every attempt to seize control. Gregory's wheezing words spilled out, half scream, half sob. This is my company. Maya stepped in closer, so the camera angles caught her expression of steady certainty. Maybe, but it was our sweat, our time. You don't own us, and you don't get to steal our future. The room fell silent again, but this time not out of fear, out of awe. The workers had found their voice, and Gregory had lost his. The tension was broken only by a sound completely foreign to the office, sharp and commanding. 3 firm knocks rattling the glass door at the entrance. Gregory froze, his eyes widened, darting like an animal backing into a trap. The employees turned toward the sound, nervous energy skittering across the room like static electricity. The rhythm came again, authoritative, deliberate, impossible to ignore, and then came a knock that Gregory did not expect the pounding on. The door startled the office into silence. 3 sharp knocks, deliberate and heavy, like the prelude to Judgment Day. Gregory's eyes darted to the glass window. His breath caught when he saw 2 men and 1 woman in dark suits, clipboards in hand, badges glinting faintly under the fluorescent light. One carried a slim briefcase, the kind of accessory you'd never mistake for casual. Open up, the woman commanded, her voice cutting clean through the air. Maya rose, her chin steady, and unlocked the door. The trio stepped inside with practiced authority. They did not smile, did not pause. They scanned the tense office like surgeons preparing for an extraction. The leader introduced herself briskly. State Financial Enforcement Division. We're here regarding Mr. Gregory Sandler. Gregory let out a forced laugh, the kind of strained chuckle used to fill air when reality becomes unbearable. This must be some mix-up. These are my employees, friends, family. where what you're seeing here is passion, hard work, entrepreneurship. His hand gestured wildly at the team, as if they might nod and validate his script. Not a single head moved. Silence dangled around him like a noose. We received reports of misused funds linked to this company. The agent continued without missing a beat. Lavish personal expenses filed as business costs, payments defaulted, vendors complaining of non-payment. Gregory sputtered. No, that's you don't understand. Of course, I had to expense appearances. It's how you attract investors. This is all part of strategy. Ask them, he snapped, sweeping his arm toward the rows of employees, but instead of nods of loyalty, out came smartphones. Dozens of them, still recording. The agents didn't even need to request evidence, the workers delivered it themselves. Maya produced the copied files. Devon played the fresh video of Gregory's meltdown. Jasmine quietly handed over unpaid invoices, each new item stacked on the desk like a brick wall in Gregory's path to escape. His confident veneer melted under the fluorescent lights, replaced by beads of sweat. He tried one last gambit, pulling the famed Gregory charm, the salesman grin that had once convinced bright young minds to pawn their futures. Look, maybe there were missteps. No one builds a billion-dollar company without stumbling. But I am the kind of visionary this country thrives on. We need dreamers, don't we? The agent met his grin with stone. Visionaries don't funnel wages into yachts, Mr. Sandler. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the employees. Cameras zoomed closer. Viewers live streaming through employees' accounts were already commenting in floods of angry emoji and declarations of solidarity. On social media, clips spread like wildfire. Startup Messiah exposed boss, steals wages for luxury life. The hashtags multiplied faster than Gregory's excuses. By the time the agents finished unpacking their binders, Gregory's reputation wasn't just crumbling in that tiny office. It was evaporating online for millions to see. Mr. Sandler, the lead agent said with finality, you need to come with us. Gregory's face drained of color. His lip trembled as he tried to summon resistance. He pointed frantically at Maya. She hacked my files. That's a crime. Arrest her. She's the real thief here. Maya didn't move. She didn't need to. The agent coolly replied, your financial trail speaks clearly enough. Paper doesn't lie. And that was it. Two agents stepped forward, flanking him. His body locked rigid as their hands guided him toward the exit. This isn't how it ends, Gregory bellowed, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. To build this company. I am this company. The workers didn't argue, they didn't jeer, they simply recorded every second, every flinch, every pathetic attempt to cling to power. When the glass door swung shut behind Gregory, it was as if a vacuum released. The air filled again, lighter than it had been in months. Shoulders slumped with relief. Some cried quietly. Others clasped hands, whispers of finally echoing like hymns. Neighborhood support quickly followed. Parents who had worried about their children working without pay posted fierce condemnations online. Former co-workers of Gregory weighed in, confirming similar patterns of deceit. By nightfall, the story wasn't just local anymore. National business pages leaned in, journalists circling like hawks. Gregory didn't stride from the office that day with charisma intact. He shuffled under the grip of two agents, red-faced, swollen with failure. His empire, once built on smooth words and stolen loyalty, collapsed beneath the spotlight of truth. Yet even as employees celebrated the image of him being led away, Maya knew the story wasn't finished. A fraud had been exposed. Yes, but exposure wasn't the real victory, because what came next would matter even more than Gregory's downfall. But the true victory wasn't just Gregory's downfall. It was what happened next. After the glass door closed behind Gregory, silence lingered. Not the suffocating silence of fear that had hung over the office for months, but something different, raw, liberating, like the first deep breath after surfacing from underwater. For the first time in too long, the workers looked at one another, not as prisoners of a failing dream, but as survivors who had emerged into the sunlight. It happened slowly at first. Devon half joked, well, I guess the payroll department's wide open now. Nervous laughter followed, laughter tinged with relief instead of despair. Jasmine later suggested, what if we kept going? But this time, on our own terms. Heads lifted, eyebrows arched. For months, they had been told their worth was conditional, dependent on one man's charisma. Now that the pedestal was empty, an astonishing truth crept into view. They had carried the work all along. Maya was the one who put words to it. Standing at the center of the office, voice steady, she offered the idea plainly. We've already built the backbone, the code, the framework, the prototypes, they're ours. Gregory didn't create those, we did. Why not do it the right way together as equals? The phrase hung in the air like a seed. And almost immediately it began to sprout. The group huddled around whiteboards, sketching outlines of a new plan. No tricks, no grandiose promises, no cult-like reverence, just collaboration and fairness. They wouldn't pour their unpaid hours into someone else's pockets. They would pool their skills into a cooperative, where ownership wasn't a weapon but a shared foundation. It wasn't glamorous. There were no marble-floored villas, no private clubs waiting. What there was, however, felt stronger, a sense of mutual protection. One person designed a transparent pay structure. Another drafted a rotating leadership model so no single ego could corrupt the group again. Tasks were reassigned according to strength, not flattery. And paychecks, modest at first, appeared on time, like a beacon that dignity had returned. Word spread, first through their families, then through the community. The workers who exposed the fraud are building something better, headlines read. Local businesses reached out, eager to partner with people who understood not only technology but accountability. Orders trickled in. Soon orders streamed. Their tiny workspace, once a warehouse for Gregory's illusions, became a furnace of actual productivity. Humble, yes, but honest. Systematically, their growth didn't look like sleek suits and keynote speeches. It looked like tired but satisfied smiles over late-night pizza. It looked like people leaving early to attend their children's games without fear of retribution. It looked like dignity reborn brick by brick. Hour by hour, Maya, often reluctant to step into the spotlight, found herself the natural voice of the new venture. In an interview recorded by local news, she delivered the reflection that had crystallized in her heart. Real visions don't demand exploitation. They create opportunity. Leadership isn't a crown you force others to carry around for you. It's a responsibility to lift others higher. Gregory taught us what leadership is not. That lesson was painful, but it's why we're going to build something worth trusting. Her words cemented what everyone already knew. The image of Gregory being led away had gone viral, but the image of the workers, building a cooperative and speaking openly about fairness, resonated far longer as the weeks passed. The fear that once lived in that warehouse space was replaced by something sturdier. The desks that once sagged under exhaustion now bore the weight of energized ideas. The walls echoed not with threats but with laughter and strategy. The cinematic ending wasn't a shot of Gregory in handcuffs. It was a slow montage of hands, typing, sketching, shaking in agreements. It was Maya and her co-workers stepping into a morning sun, lunchbags in hand, ready to work in a place they could finally call their own. The moral is clear and must be carved in stone. True leadership doesn't feed on sacrifice. It multiplies dignity and trust. And so, the company Gregory built through exploitation vanished with his ego. But the one born from unity endured, proof that dignity, once defended, can never be taken back.